All right, so now let's get started with the actual program. I'm here in my conference room of my new office. It's a great conference room. It's like nice, modern, and a little bit rustic with the things here. So you'll see me do some videos here. Some others in other locations. So we're going to mix it up a little bit, but quite a few are going to be here with this kind of like, what is that weird painting here? Stop here on. Okay, whatever that means. Anyway, let's get started. So how do you select a great area? Now, here's the thing. This system works wherever there's land in the United States. However, the sweet spot of this program works in the following areas. Number one, it works in the immediate outskirts of big metropolitan area and larger cities. Now, what I mean by big metropolitan areas, it's the big cities of the United States, like the Phoenix, Arizona, like the Los Angeles, like the Atlanta, Georgia, like you name it, right? The big cities that have multiple millions of people, that Houston, Texas, Dallas, Texas, and so on, that have at least, let's say, 1 million people. And where those cities truly end, and not just the city itself, but the metro area ends, right outside of those areas, that's where we pick up some of our most profitable deals. Now, why is that? Very simply, because out there's demand for the properties. We're in the path of growth. If the cities keep growing, then they're going to grow into those areas. At the same time, there's a lot of people who want to be close to the city, but not claustrophobically in the middle of the city. So they want to have 2 acres, 1 acre, 5 acres, 10 acres, just outside of the city, but within let's say, a 10, 20-minute drive of the hospitals, of the grocery stores, and of restaurants and entertainment and so on and so forth. So therefore, in those areas right outside of the city and all the way up to perhaps an hour outside of the city, that's where we get our most profitable deals, because they also have a very nice characteristics of being lower priced. An acre there doesn't cost $1 million like it might cost in the middle of the city, right? Instead, an acre costs perhaps only $50,000. Now, you might be able at $20,000. So usually it's like in 1 to 5 acre parcels are anywhere worth between $20,000 to $100,000, which is really one of our sweet spots to make this business work. And the other part about it, so therefore it's cheap enough for somebody who owns the property to basically say, you know what, at the end of the day, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I'll give it up at a discount. At the same time, it's high enough value and attractive enough for you to find a buyer right away for these kind of properties. The second kind of properties we want to focus on is the properties in the actual city. You can go after those. It's a little bit harder to get them. These are lots, or what's called infill lots, because there's like a street, let's say, with a bunch of houses, and there's 3 lots that are still empty. You can go after these 3 lots. They're usually $50,000 to $500,000 properties, so much higher priced property. So it's a niche within the niche, but you can find those. It will require you to send more mail. It will require you to get a lower response rate than our bread and butter deals, but you can go after those too. And then obviously you flip those to somebody else, then you flip the other ones. Those infill properties, you flip to a builder. The other ones, right in the outskirts, you can also flip to a builder, but often you sell those to somebody who just wants to have a little bit, like might want to have horses, or wants to have a little bit more like a mini farm, or just wants to own some land and have the city approach it for value appreciation. The third group of properties we go after is really the larger acreage in the more rural area. So half an hour, 2 hours outside of a bigger city, where there's like recreational land, where you can pick up 10 to 40 to 50, even 100 or even 300 acres. You can pick them up there, sometimes for as little as $50 an acre, $100 an acre. And they're recreational land that you also sell usually to people who want to have recreational land. They want to go there with their RVs. They want to go there with their campers. They want to go there and build a cabin on there. Or they want to be part of that, like preppers, doomsday preppers that want to have a place off the grid, and so on and so forth. So these are our core 3 kind of ways. There's one other way that's usually in somewhat rural areas, particularly in the southern part of the United States. There's areas where there's entire abandoned subdivisions, where there's lots of like half acre, quarter acre parcels, they're usually only worth about $2,500 to $5,000 a piece, but you can pick those up in droves for $50 to $100, $200 each, but the selling of them is a little bit different. What will go into that in our process. So this is the thing. So first thing is you want to identify what kind of property you want to go after. And after you identify what kind of property you want to go after, now you want to see, well, where are those properties? And that drives your selection criteria. So if you want to go after infill properties, you certainly want to go after the big cities. If you want to go after the properties around it, then make a list of the top 10, the top 20 cities in the United States, and go pick one that you see from the map has a lot of land around it. And when we switch over to my computer in just a moment, I'll actually show you how to actually do that. So we'll talk about that. Also, once you do that, you want to then go and almost kind of like identify the counties that are around there, the counties that are subject to where the properties that you want to go after are in, and that's where you're going to go to get your list from. So let's switch over to my computer right now, and I can show you, again, I can summarize what I just said, and I can show you how you go about that.
All right, here we are at my computer. You see the image of the actual course here in front of you, and let's get going and let's talk about the next module here, the first module, which is how to find a great area. So here's go. Let me quickly summarize again, since it's the first official module other than the introduction, quickly the deal flow as it happens in the land profit generator in the land business. So we first want to identify a new area, a great area. Then we want to talk about we're going to talk about a little bit what kind of properties to focus on. Then we talk about getting a list, filtering your list, contacting the owners. We talk about letters, which letter to use, what questions to ask the people, talking to the sellers and so on. Then we're going to talk about how to get the value of the property, which in my model, you can either do before you send out the letters or after you send out the letters. It just all depends on what exactly you want to do. And then how to make the offers, and then also how to use contract or options, which way when you make your offers are you going to send out a contract or an option. Then afterwards we talk about detailed analysis and how to renegotiate on eventual deals. And then at the last step is closing on the property or doing a double escrow or doing an assignment and so on. So with that, now let's jump right into the first subject that I just in the introduction was talking about, which is identifying a great area. Now, where do we go to find great land is really here the question. So one of the premises that I want to focus on right now is that you do not need to see the property. With land, the beauty about land is that there is no roofs to inspect, there is no foundations to inspect, there is no plumbing to inspect, there is no risk of mold or anything like that. It's just land. As a result, you don't have to go personally go inspect it. What you're going to see is a bunch of dirt, right? It's against some brushes, against a bunch of trees, a bunch of whatever it is. So, and all of that you can see using tools like Google Map, Google Earth, county, geographical information systems, and so on. So you don't need to walk the property. You don't need to see the property. You can see it virtually from your computer. Now, I'm not saying you can't see it. You obviously, if you want to, if you have the need to go hug your land one time before you go not see it anymore, then go ahead and do that. Take some pictures and so on. There's some benefits around the picture taking and so on, which I'll cover later on. There's other ways for that too. But you don't have to really see your land. Since the year 2006, I have not looked at any of my pieces of land. I have students that have done this since the year 2008. They have never gone out to see a piece of land that they have purchased, and they have purchased dozens, hundreds even, and they've never seen a single one of them. So, therefore, you can do this all online, and all of these tools that I just mentioned, Google Maps, Google Earth, County GIS systems, they're all for free, and they give you really nice pictures on how you can actually, on the land and so on. So, now, before we also go a step further, we also want to talk quickly about what kind of land you want to focus on. And in my experience, having done this since the end of 2002, I have had most success in 4 kind of areas of land, 4 kind of types of land. The first kind of land is the 1 to 5 acre lots in the immediate outskirts of large metro areas. This is really where you make the most money. This is, and when I mean metro areas, I mean big metro areas. I mean really big 1 million people, not $1 million. It's a typo there. 1 million people metro areas, like the big top 20, top 30, top 50 cities of the United States. And then instead of me listing it out here, you can just go to Google and type in top most populated metro areas in the United States, and it brings up a list of them right away, and then you can go from there. The second kind of type of land is, and we'll talk about each of these kinds of lands in the next module a little bit more. I just wanted to introduce them right now. The next kind of type of land are what's called infill lots. Infill lots are in the city, which are basically lots where there's a whole bunch of houses and there's one empty lot. A whole bunch of commercial properties and one empty lot. Right? Now, these are usually not your cheap $5, $10, $20, $30,000 properties. They're usually worth much more, of course, unless they're in a bad area, but we don't want to buy land in bad areas anyway, so you want to stay away from those. So, but if they're in a good area, they're usually very high in demand. You can find them. You might not get the same discounts that we're talking about. You might not get the same 5 to 25 cents on the dollar discounts here that you only paid 5 to 25 cents on the dollar. But instead, you can get you can perhaps get 40, 50% discounts. But the key is when you get a deal like that in an active market, then you can immediately turn around and sell those in a day to usually a builder. I got a friend of mine who just bought 2.2 acres in a very desirable area. He literally paid $2.2 million for it. Now, actually, here's the deal. He did not buy it. He put it on a contract for $2.2 million, and he sold it to a nationwide builder for $2.6 million in a matter of just a few weeks, and made himself a nice $400,000 paycheck by doing that. So that's the infill lots. It's a little bit more of a treasure hunt versus the 1 to 5 acres in the immediate outskirts of a large metro area. Those are your bread and butter. Those are your deals that make this a business for you, because you send X letters, you get X deals, and you make X kind of profit. Also, the third category falls into the category of the first one. It's your bread and butter deals. It's those large acre properties in the more rural areas. It's the 10, the 20, the 40, or even 100, or even the most I've ever bought and sold was 320 acres, which is half a square mile that I bought and sold. And literally in some areas, half a square mile might not be worth more than $30,000, $40,000. But you can buy it. What if you can buy it for $5,000 or $6,000, or put it on a contract for $5,000 and $6,000, and then go sell it for $20,000, $25,000? You're making a nice chunk of money when you do that, and I've done that many times. And plus, my students have done that many times. And then the last category of properties is one that I want to caution you a little bit, unless you have a kind of like a good exit strategy for it, unless you know some internet marketing, unless you have perhaps a buyer that buys a lot of them from you. And those are the small quarter-acre properties. They're often also somewhat in the outskirts of town, but they can be found usually in the southern states like California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Florida, and so on and so forth. And they are where there's abandoned subdivisions with hundreds or even thousands of these quarter-acre, half-acre properties, and only about 5 to 10% of them have houses on, and it's 90% vacant. You can make a lot of money in them, but you got to be a little bit careful, because they're usually only worth $2,500 to $3,000 to $5,000. So let's say between $2,500 and $5,000. And when you buy them, you cannot afford to often even pay per title insurance and things like that. We'll cover that when we talk about closing them. You can afford only to pay like $100, $200 for them, and then you sell them for something like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, often with seller financing, and they provide very nice small cash flow streams of like $100 a piece, but for 2, 3, 4 years. But they have their merit if you want to use them, if you want to go after them. So I wanted to mention them. Now, each of them have a different use. Therefore, you want to already get familiar with that. Each of them obviously have a different type of buyer that goes after them. And some are better for cash flow and some are better for cash. So let's jump into them a little bit more here. The 4 different types of land. Again, the 1 to 10 acres, they're very good for cash sales. The ones in the outskirts of town, just between like a 10, 15, and 60-minute driving distance off larger metro areas. And later on, as we go into the detail, into the research and so on, I'll show you some example of those too. They're very good for cash sales because they're very attractive, right? They're easy to get to. They're on paved roads. They usually have all utilities to them, or most of them. They are within 15, 20, 30 minutes. You're in the middle of the city. You're at hospitals. You're at grocery stores. You're at golf courses. You're at restaurants. So you have all these amenities, and therefore they're attractive to people who want to build either right away, or they're attractive to people who want to play the appreciation game, who understand that this is a growing city that you go after, which ideally you want to go after growing cities, and that's growing in that direction. So if they hold on to those properties for, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, the city should be already have approached them, should be all around, there should be houses, and all of a sudden their property that might right now be worth $30,000, that you can buy for 4 or put on a contract for 4, that you then go sell for 20, let's say, and you make a $16,000 profit, those properties might be worth $300,000 down the road, and they're willing to wait for that. You're flipping them for the quick cash flow of $16,000, which helps you to get out of debt, which helps you to go invest in more deals, which helps you to build up a cushion of cash and so on and so forth. But they are buying it because they believe that, and probably rightfully believe, that in the next 10, 15 years, this property area is going to be exploding, and they're going to sit on a $250,000 property that they paid $20,000 for. So each of you has a different goal, and therefore you have to take different actions. So the next part is, the second part is those infill lots. Those infill lots are dramatically good for cash. They're the best for cash, but they're also, as I mentioned earlier, they're the hardest to get because there's not that many of them there. It's a little bit of a treasure hunt. You got to send a whole bunch of letters to get them. You got to go search for them, but you can get good deals on them. And then when you get good deals on them, you sell them to a builder, and they will then build a beautiful home on there. So here's an example, for example, of what happens, particularly in the first kind of area. Here's John Montero. He's done 20 deals in 1 year. So he started with us just 1 year prior to me creating this program. He's done all these deals all his 20 deals are within the 15 to 60 minute drive from a large metropolitan area. They're all between usually 1 and 10 acres. And in the process on these 20 deals, he's done over $400,000 already. On the right side, you see actually a picture on Facebook that he just put up that it basically says, just closed another home run deal using Jack Bosch's teachings. 8.76 acres, all-in cost basis for $11,000. And he sold it on terms less than 30 days for $92,000. Now that includes principal and interest over the note term, so probably he sold it for something like $70,000 or $75,000 plus monthly payments and things like that. So it's pretty much a tremendous deal that he pulled off right here. And the beautiful thing is, and you can do the exact same thing. So again, there's the 4 types of different pieces of land. The other 2 that I wanted to mention are, again, the same ones I just mentioned. It's the 10 to 100 acre plus in the more rural areas. Those are both for both cash and seller financing, but you're getting a little bit more of seller financing interest in these kind of properties. And what you want to do with those, if you flip a 10 or 20 or 40 or 80 acre parcel, a lot of times these are interesting for people who are like the outdoors. So people who are like recreational buyers, who want to go camping, want to go dirt biking, want to go just have a place out there where, yes, over time they might build a cabin on there. But they might build the cabin off the grid, right? They don't need utilities necessarily to the property. So solar panels are so cheap now again and so efficient that it's becoming very, very feasible for anyone to build a house in the middle of nowhere where they want to and put a well in the ground, put solar up there, and then perhaps get propane gas, and then they're completely independent, completely independent from the utility grid. So there's recreational buyers that are looking for that stuff. There's hunters that look for those kind of things if it's in a hunting area. And also there's this entire movement towards like the tiny house, the off the grid, the farm, the solar crowd that want to be independent of just all these big society pressures that people have. So there's lots of them out there. There's huge conventions out there. I know there's a tiny home convention that happens once a year, where the last one they had 35,000 people there that are interested in one of these tiny homes. There's TV shows about tiny homes and so on. So that's a I don't know if it's a fad or if it's a movement towards that, but bottom line is people don't mind pulling a house after them, putting it out there into nature somewhere, and they don't necessarily need all the utilities for it. They want to have space more than anything. So not space to live in, but space to roam on their property. So there's a lot of demand for these large acre parcels. And then there's the small quarter acre parcels in abandoned subdivisions. Those also work. As I said, I want to caution you a little bit against them, because typically they almost only sell for seller financing. It's kind of funny. People with money have enough money to pay $50,000 cash for a nice property in the outskirts of town. People without money usually don't have the money to even pay $5,000 for a nice piece of land. They need seller financing on those $3,000 to $5,000 pieces of property, and they often can only come up with like a $200 down payment or so. But if you only pay $200 for the property, you get all your money back at closing, and then you get $100 a month, which is very, very quickly adds up to a lot of cash flow. So, for example, when I started these kind of deals, the fourth category, those were my first cash flow deals. Bought properties for $400, sold them for $4,000, got a $200 down payment, $100 a month. After 2 months, I had my money back. And now the rest of it was gravy. The rest of it was profit. And I do these deals occasionally still. I don't focus on these kind of deals anymore, because it's the exact same effort buying a $50,000 property or $30,000 property than it is to buy a $4,000 or $3,000 property. So therefore, I personally don't do many of those anymore, but I probably have done over 1,000 of those over the years that I've done it. And here's an example of Jonathan and Hannah Havilis, who have done exactly those kind of deals. They do them as a good part of their portfolio. They have since also moved up to the more $200,000, the $50,000, the $60,000 lots. But they have flipped over 300 properties already over the last 5 years. They came across my program. They're already doing some things in real estate in the houses area. They have since abandoned all the housing stuff, and they're only doing land, and they're doing very, very well working from home as a family business. So here's the thing. They bought over 100 properties of these kind of like quarter acre in an abandoned subdivision properties for $300 a piece. But the reason why they did it in their case is because they sold them for $2,500 each, all to one buyer. So if you make a profit of $2,000 on every single one of them, and you sell 100, that's a quick $200,000 profit. And they probably sold at least 20, 30, 40 of them every year since they have been doing that. So the 100 properties is probably low on that end, but I know it's at least 100. So here's the thing. So based on your decision now, you want to spend a moment right now and decide about what kind of property you want to go after. So based on that, you decide to either stay very close to the big cities, right, to the 15 to 30 to 60 minute drive from the big cities, which in the United States is not a big drive. And then, or you want to go inside the cities, but again, that's a little less predictable, higher price and so on. Or you go further out and focus on larger properties. That's obviously an option too. Or you do volume deals with $3,000 properties bought at $100 to $300, and you just like crank them out. A lot of them are seller financing. Build up $100 a pop, $100 a month per property, which is actually very, very cool, because you can do as many as you want. They're like in certain areas, they exist like sand. They're out there. So you can buy 100 of them in one swoop. The most I've literally ever done in such a neighborhood was I send out 100 letters. Get this, 35 phone calls from the owners. Actually, no, that's incorrect. I got 55 phone calls from the owners of these properties. So out of 100 properties that I sent letters to, on more than 50% of them, I got a phone call back from the seller wanting to sell. And I bought 35 of these properties. That's where the 35 comes in. And at the end, on average, I made a $4,000 profit on every single one of them. So you can do the same thing. Then now you can make the math. 4,000 times 35 is something like 120 and 100 and something like $140,000 in profits made on those deals. So you can do the exact same thing there too. Many of our students do, but you got to understand that your cash flow is going to be smaller checks. But smaller checks add up too, because in this case, almost all of these deals in that example where I bought 35, I sold with seller financing, and I get 35 times. I think I sold 5 of them for cash, and I got 30 times $100, which is $3,000 a month for the next 5 years in cash flow from those properties. Now, if you do, I don't know where you are in life, but if $3,000 a month at that point of time paid for my mortgage, paid for my car payment, paid for my car insurance, paid for my gas, paid for my electricity, paid for my the city gas to heat the house, paid for my clothing for that matter, and paid for pretty much almost my entire life. So it's up to you to decide where you are in life. If you have if you have a lifestyle that's substantially higher than that, then chances are you want to do a little bit more of those deals. But back then when I started, my lifestyle was very, very modest. I was working on a $45,000 a year salary, supporting one income earner salary, because my wife was still finishing an advanced college degree, Michelle, and then so all I needed to replace was that, and I replaced that with cash flow and a few deals a month. And we were financially free in a matter of 10 months from starting this business. 10 months it took from the very first deal, which happened on Christmas Day. I got it accepted. Got the voicemail from somebody on Christmas Day, 2002. And on October 17th, 2003, I was able to quit my job with actually my debt paid off, my student debt paid off, my consumer debt paid off, one of my cars paid off, and literally $3,000, more than $3,000. As a matter of fact, at that point, $5,000 a month in passive income from these little seller financing deals. Now, I'm going to go into the seller financing deal much, much more later on when we go into the selling and how to structure the sale and so on and so forth. But I wanted to make sure that you don't discard those deals. But in the current market, they have to be mostly sold with seller financing. All right, so now let's jump into how to actually do this. That'll show you a couple of tools, actually one tool in particular that you can use, and this is the tool what's called freemaptools.com/radius-around-point.htm. The point here is there's some tools out there that allow you to draw a circle around a city of your choice or a place of your choice, and when you do that, then you can basically identify where, what properties you are, or what counties and what areas you want to go for. So, and this is a tool for that. Now, let me also make a quick disclaimer, right? I pulled this to map tool off the internet. I do not own freemaptools.com. Somebody else owns it. I do not own it. It's a third-party tool, so it can change any time. So if you're watching this program right now and you click on that and you go to that tool, to that link, then and it does not work, then don't blame me for it. Literally, it could possibly not work anymore 5 minutes after I record this or 5 minutes after we launch this course. So therefore, it can change any time. If it for any reason does not work anymore, I need you to be resourceful. I need you to go to Google and search for the term online radius map. And when you do that, a whole bunch of different similar tools will pop up, because there's always new ones coming on the market and offering their free services. Okay, so but the easiest way to do that is to go in your members area, right here in your members area. There's an area that's called resources, and when you go in there, we're going to put all the resources that we know of, and as they change, the updated resources, we're going to update it there so that you can always find the latest and the greatest, or at least very good updated as resources in this resource section. Okay, so if you come across a link that doesn't work anymore, let us know. We'll immediately go find a better one and then put it and update it in the resource area for the benefit of everyone else. So here's the thing. So let's go look at that. And let's jump over there. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to come over here. Here's the map tool. So this is like this random thing, and the way they make money is by having this like advertising all over the place. Well, we're going to ignore this right now. Here's the thing. Here's a map we can search for a location, or we can go down here and we can go and we can say put a radius of, let's say it's not working in kilometers, let's say put a radius of 50 miles around, click on around the location of, let's just pick Atlanta, Georgia, right? And now we're going to say draw a radius, and all of a sudden nothing kind of happens, but if we go up again, we now see that right here it pulled up Georgia, Atlanta, and it put a radius of 50 miles around it. Now 50 miles might sound a little bit much, so that because we can already see Georgia kind of ends around here, around Marietta, Georgia, Alpharetta, Georgia, and so on. And if we're further out, if we're out here, we're probably already beyond, like getting close to that 60-minute driving circle. So how far do you drive from the outskirts of the city to drive 15 minutes? Well, if it's 15 minutes on the regular road, you might only be 15, or you might only be like 30 miles outside of Metro Detroit, Atlanta I'm talking about, Metro Atlanta. So we can eliminate somehow this one here, but it put like one on top of it. So this is basically what we want to look at right now. So, and you can play with this and you can figure out how to eliminate one of them. I don't actually know how to eliminate one of them, but you can, it doesn't really matter. We can just look at that one. If in doubt, if you don't know how to do it, you just close the window and open it up again. So as you can tell, I'm not tremendously computer savvy, right? I'm playing with this live here on purpose, not rehearsed, for you to see how simple this is. I just pulled this up, I got down there, and there's one circle that says 50 miles, one that says 30 miles outside of Atlanta. So if I look at this and I say, well, let me be behind, let's say, if the city ends here, perhaps I got to be even a little bit closer. Perhaps I say 20 miles outside of Atlanta. And now, let's see, what do we have here? We have 20 miles, which is this third one here. So basically everything that's around here, Marietta, Kennesaw, Rockmart, Willarica, Carrollton, what you want to do right now is you want to write down these names of these towns. So Carrollton and Newman and Griffin and Covington, and what else do we have here? Lawrenceville and Duluth and Alpharetta and Winder and basically and Waleska and Canton and Dawsonville. And now what we want to do is we want to open another window here. And in that other window, what we want to do is we want to go and we want to type in Atlanta, or it's like Georgia county map. Alright, so we're going to go Georgia county map, and we're going to pull up a map that has, ideally that has the cities on it too. Want to see which one are the big cities. It should come up any moment here. There we go. It this one doesn't have any cities. So we want to go back to the map here and see if there's one with cities. This one could be one with cities. This one looks like it has. There we go. This one has some cities. So therefore, it tells us, because off the top of my head, I might not know where in Georgia Atlanta is. Right? I mean, I'm looking around here, and Atlanta is not in Atlanta County. It's somewhere else. So if we look around this, what we see here is Atlanta is here. And if I can now see those towns that I just looked at, if I zoom in a little more, if I look at the towns that we have just talked about, we talked about Clayton. What towns were we talking about? Let's look at that. We're talking about Catersville. Let's look at Catersville. Catersville is right here. Catersville tells us that is in Bartow County. So now we have a county that we know is outside of Atlanta, Georgia, about the right distance. Also, what I like about it has an interstate going through, so it means that's probably a natural path of expansion, and it also has some other roads going through it. I also look at this one, Dallas. There's like Paulding County would be a good county, and then we can look at below here, which is Douglas County. So we can go around Atlanta here and pick some of these counties. Now, if we want to be further out, then we can go further out. We can go into this one, somewhere in Chattanooga. Well, that's Chattanooga already. So we probably want to see perhaps this Floyd County might be interesting, because just outside of Chattanooga, and it's just out of Atlanta, it's kind of interesting. Polk might be interesting too, because it's not too far away from it. So you can basically, with that, with that little tool, you can basically see what's going on over there. So now Chattanooga is already in the next town, state, but we can measure, we can see, well, this is actually quite a bit of distance. So everything around here might be falling into that third category of properties, which is the more rural areas, the 10 to 100 acres, and so on and so forth. Now, you can do this for any market in the United States. You can do this the same thing for Charleston, for Nashville, for Charlotte. You can go to for Dallas, for New Orleans, for Houston. All you need to do is go down here and type in, put in that 20-mile radius outside of Houston, Texas, and say draw a radius. And guess what? Now we have a map around Houston here. Now let's look at that. This one does not seem to be big enough, right? Because if you look at this right now, you can see, as a matter of fact, it also allows you to change the satellite. You can see that with this, we're still inside the city. So we're not yet outside the city. So in this case, 20 miles is not enough. So let's do 30 miles, and let's check that out. Go up here again. Let's zoom in. Well, yeah, with 30 miles, it looks like we're right around the perimeter of Houston. So therefore, everything around here should be fair game, right? Everything around here. And if we look at that, guess what we find? We find land. We find some properties here, of which some apparently are empty. Here's an empty lot. Here's the 3 empty lots. But there's houses too. So we find some other land. So this makes me hopeful right away, or it makes me very positive, because it tells me that there's an empty lot, there's an empty lot, there's an empty lot. It tells me right away that there are properties for that. So I hope that makes sense. So this is what you do. This is how you find out your areas, and then you do the exact same thing. You go Google for counties, for the state. In this case, would be Texas state map, Texas map with counties or so, and then it'll come up. Let's look quickly again what we looked for here. What did we look for? We looked for Georgia county map, and we can do the exact same thing here. We can do Texas county map. It comes right up. We can zoom right in. We can see where's Houston. It'll come right up. Houston is probably right here somewhere, right? Galveston, so where's Houston is right here. And it tells us Houston is in, actually this one is a little small for you to perhaps see, but it tells us that Houston is in Harris County, and then you can tell where the other towns around it are. There we go, it zooms in right now. Well, it actually brought us to the next map. Either way, so you can play with those things. You can tell that I'm not a computer genius, yet I was able to do over 3,800 deals at a time that this program has been created. So therefore, that's what you do. You find the links to places like that on the resources, or you can use this one if it still exists by the time you watch this. So homework. On each of these modules, we're actually going to give you some homework. This is not just for you to sit back and actually enjoy this, hopefully enjoy it. This is actually for you to do a few steps yourself. So what I want you to do is right now, you're already probably watching this on your computer since it's an online program, and you want to go and right away open your browser and do exactly what I just did. Use the radius tool, pick 2-3 counties in 2-3 different states around 2-3 different metropolitan areas. Ideally around these larger cities, or if you want to go further out, then do that too. Go into rural areas that have something of interest. Something where there's lakes, where there's mountains, but still where you don't have to drive 8 hours to get to the next city. So in the case of Houston right now, pick something that's like an hour, 2 hours from Houston. In the case of Atlanta, pick something that's an hour, 2 hours from Atlanta. Perhaps there's a beautiful mountain range where people go hiking, where people want to have cabins and so on. In Los Angeles is a beautiful place, but there's 7, 8, 10 million people living there, and so people want to get out of the city. So they go out the city, and there's a big Bear area, mountain ranges, skiing areas within 2 hours, let's say without traffic within an hour. With traffic in LA between 2-3 hours, you're going to be in a mountain area that there's cabins, there's things where you can go hiking, where you can go camping, where you can go skiing for that matter. So people in big cities are attracted to that. So if you want to go into the rural areas, Go into places that have something to offer, because that's when properties actually are going to sell very, very quickly. You can totally go into a county like Elko County, Nevada, where there's a million, exaggerating a little bit, but probably thousands of 60-acre, 40, 50, 60-acre parcels that you can pick up for $2,000 a piece. But guess what? When you sell them for $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, which is a nice income. But you're going to sit on them for a while because there's absolutely nothing close by to that county. So just want to, as an example. So this land program works everywhere. But if you stick around the bigger cities, and if you go within an hour or two of the bigger cities, you got your market built in, because the market is the people that are living in those big cities. So write down those counties, and then let's move on to the next module.